demonizing treatment for children. That is not cool. She has exposed her life to the whole world just to show how great it can be to be trans in this world. Hello, hello. It's Brandi's world. Okay, on today's episode, we are continuing our look at a podcast titled Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle. It's brought to us by the Christian Post and hosted by Brandon Showalter. Okay, and today we are looking at episode 2. Continuing our look at episode 2. We're going to close it out today, at least episode 2. And episode 2 is titled, Doctors Unveil Trans Scandal Inside Clinics and Medical Institutions. Families are being torn apart. That's the title of this episode. We're about 3/4 of the way through it, or 2/3 of the way through it. We're almost through it. Let's see what else they have to tell us today on this transgender battle, looking at medical stuff.
The one most effective spokespeople is Walt Heyer, the man who grew up as the biologic male he was, and who in his midlife left his wife and 2 children and lived as a woman for 10 or 11 years, and then realized that everything was broken all along, and he came back from that journey, detransitioned, and
wow, it sounds like that person had quite the journey, quite the experience. Tell you right now, whatever experience that person has is their experience. It's not me to bash their experience, not you to bash their experience. Whatever conclusions they came to was a personal thing for them. I can't say of what was going on in their life to cause them to detransition or to transition in the first place. I don't know. We're going to hear this story and let's find out what happens.
Is now a spokesman. He has Change Regret website for people to come to, and he gets thousands of hits per month from people who are saying, I'm in this pickle, or I was thinking about doing this, talk me out of it. And so he is well past the statute of limitations, as are many of the adults that are coming out of the woodwork to decry this. But there is now a new generation of, particularly of females who have transitioned in their late teens, early 20s, who have lasted as little as a year, and they've come back from that.
Ooh, they're really picking around the edges, right? They're going to say all people who have transitioned, what percentage of them detransition? It is not above 50%. It's not above 40%. It's not above 20%. It's not even above 10%. It's not even above 4%. Somewhere 1 to 2%, maybe. So they're going to find individuals who have stories. And if you have maybe 300,000 people who transition, and maybe 1%, not even 1% of those are going to detransition, and you're going to have a few people. You can find those people. You can interview those people. But guess what? They're not going to speak for all the people. And this is what they're going to try to do right here. They're going to get these outlier people. Their experience is valid. Guaranteed their experience is valid. Whatever they experienced was valid. But their valid experience does not constitute anyone else's experience. So if you want to look at transition as a treatment for dysphoria, it works. It works well. It works beyond expectations of it to work for the amount of people and the percentage of people that transitioning works for them, that they're happier in their life, that they're more themselves. By far, transitioning is the answer. Detransitioning, I don't know why these people detransition. I don't know the whole case. We're going to hear about one person. And this one person does not speak for everybody, but let them speak for themselves.
They are within the statute of limitations, so they're starting to formulate cases against the physicians and the healthcare systems and the pharmaceutical companies who provide the medication. So I think this is where we'll see some resolution of this, and the quicker the sooner, as I always say.
Dr. Van Mol agrees that a resolution to the horrors could be on the horizon and shared some of his own take on this consequential matter.
Things are happening in the shadows, and people assumed certain things, and it's pretty easy for people to look the other way, especially when you really don't know what's going on. Let me give you an example of an endocrinology colleague of mine who lives in the same state, California, and he was presenting to a group of legislators, basically congressmen and senators in Washington, who are themselves doctors, that this NIH experiment, the first of its kind, $5.7 million experiment in 4 different centers in the US, the first to look at the medical effects of puberty blockers in minors, and only the second to look at the mental health effects. That this is not just being done down to 12 years of age, which already shocked the legislators. They didn't know it was done that young.
Wait a minute. They're saying they're surprised that puberty blockers are given to children as young as 12. They're blockers. Blocking is supposed to happen before the onset of puberty, right? At what age do you expect children to go through puberty? I was late bloomer, late in life. I didn't start my puberty till I was like 16. For me, that I was way behind all my cohorts, all my friends. They already had onset to puberty by the time I started mine. So I'm thinking children usually go through puberty around 12, 13, somewhere around there, 11, 14 on average. Some a little younger, some a little later. So if you're going to give medicine that is going to slow down or block an unwanted puberty, you have to, by logic, pretty much start that when the puberty onsets, right? Or at least before. If you already go through puberty and then you put in puberty blockers, that doesn't make sense, does it? So what, they only want people to have puberty blockers when they're 18 and already gone through puberty? Think about it, people.
But he showed him the document by which the pediatrician at Children's Hospital LA got the rules changed for the study mid-flight, and it was being done down to 8 years of age, and the room lit up.
8 years of age. I bet that's done for both cis kids and non-cis kids, right? Trans kids and cis kids who are going through an early puberty. Why else would you give an 8-year-old? If the 8-year-old is not going to go through puberty for 4 to 5 more years, why would you give them a medicine that will block something that's going to happen 5 years later? That makes no sense. They're getting those puberties because some children have accelerated puberties. They begin a puberty at 8 or 10 years old. That is not too uncommon. It happens a lot. And if you want to slow down that unwanted puberty, even if they're not trans, if you have an 8-year-old child and they're not mentally adjusted or mentally able to go through a puberty, whether they're cis or trans, you're probably going to want to slow that down or block it. Medicines for that are good. They're trying to make it sound like it's a bad thing. That's where these medicines need to be. These medicines need to be given to kids who are too young to experience an unwanted puberty. They're trying to twist this stuff around. And it's getting me a little bit upset.
These people were infuriated. They're physicians themselves, albeit they legislators, and they had no idea what was going on in the nation that they're in the House of Representatives and the Senate representing. And then when he showed from the same pediatrician at Children's Hospital LA an article in the peer review literature proving that they were doing mastectomies in girls down to 13 years of age. It's just unbelievable.
Come on. They're doing mastectomies down to 13 years of age. How many cases are that? I want to read that case. I bet you it's one case and there was some kind of circumstances that we're not privy to, right? Why would a child need at 13 a mastectomy? Oh no. No, I don't think that's happening. I think they're exaggerating this stuff. It may have happened once or twice, and that is not the norm. It is not the order of today. It's not you going to the doctor as a 13-year-old kid and going, chop me up, doctor, chop me up. Because that's not going to happen. My goodness.
Happening, and it shouldn't be, and it won't be happening long. This is all going to go down, but we don't want to wait until it simply goes down by the weight of its scientific frailty. This is all, again, low quality, poor quality data in these publications that are supporting the stuff. As proper science is being applied to it, it'll be obvious this is nowhere's land, and it's not something we should be doing. But that kind of process.
Agreed. We shouldn't be chopping at 13-year-old kids. Agreed. Unless absolutely necessary for some outstanding case that I don't know the circumstances which they need, and I will leave that up to the experts to talk with the families and have that expert opinion talk about those surgeries. But just voting public, just the general public, we start voting in laws to say we cannot allow doctors to do process X or procedure X because it makes us feel icky. It's not the way we make medical laws. And we shouldn't make medical laws like that. We should let these experts look at it. And he's looking at the outlier cases. He's not looking at the whole thing. He's not looking at the percentage of children who are treated successfully with puberty blockers, who makes their lives happier and more productive and better down the road. Why aren't they talking about that? They're only talking about the small little cases, the outliers.
Takes 10, 15, 20 years. When the kids and the families that have gone down this path and that are devastated by it don't just sue the doctors and hospitals, but the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical firms, the biotech companies, all the way up the chain, that's when this thing's going to stop, because it's going to be shown that it's not this cash cow that it is now.
One of the most disturbing aspects of the affirmation-only approach, according to Dr. Van Mol, are the data points that show that young people might outgrow a transgender identity, a development that's shielded and prevented when doctors and institutions.
Maybe people are gender fluid. You ever think about that? There is gender fluidity. I'm not gender fluid, I'm trans. So for me to try to put myself in gender fluid shoes, it doesn't work for me. I can't. For me, that's not me. I'm sure it's some people, but it's not me, and it's probably not those people either. They're probably steadfast cis, right? I'm steadfast trans. I'm not fluid. I discovered my identity and I express it. Some people discover their identity and discover that it is fluid. So yeah, there's going to be people who are fluid in their gender. They're going to flow. They're going to not fit into box A or box B. They're going to be on a spectrum. And that is awesome. That's fine. That's great. Our gender identities should be labeled on spectrums. I can be on a spectrum over here by box B in the feminine. Other people can be on the spectrum over here by box A in the masculine. And that's fine. And you can use straight masculine or you can use straight feminine. And some people are going to be somewhere in between on that spectrum and sliding around on that spectrum because they're fluid. And that is them. And don't deny them. Don't say they're wrong because they're gender fluid. You're a wrong person. You're wrong about yourself. No. Spectrum. We all exist on it. We all have a place on a gender spectrum, even fluid people, even rigid cis people, even rigid trans people. It's okay, people. We can all live on a spectrum.
Push children into these life-altering and permanent procedures.
Once you medicalize someone for what is basically a mental health problem, and by the way, we have
basically a mental health problem. Me discovering my identity is a mental health problem. No, it's not. Simply no.
Decades of literature showing very strong support for the idea that gender dysphoric youth will overwhelmingly desist conservatively 85% of the time by adulthood if they're simply left alone. Now, that statistic is compromised if you affirm, obviously, that's confusing for a kid, but you're talking about a mental health situation, the overwhelming probability.
If you don't affirm, if you tell them they're wrong in identifying their identity, and then they become an adult, yeah, confusing, isn't it? If you don't allow a kid to affirm, and then you send them out into life, they're gonna hopefully try to look inside and affirm their identity at some point. I don't know what this guy's on about.
For which is desistance by adulthood, but now you medicalize it. Well, that kid come adult is medicalized for the rest of his or her life. The persistent need for the cross-sex hormones, surgery if they engage in it, the complications of both leading to need for other medications and further surgery.
Yes, further surgery, other medications. We can minimalize that, especially if transgender children who identify themselves as transgender children are given hormone blockers to block an unwanted and unnecessary and unneeded puberty. When they block that, they are saving themselves from unnecessary surgeries later on in life. Unwanted chopping at bodies can be prevented by puberty blockers. If you lay out a game plan with your supportive family, supportive doctors, and a support network around you, that child can grow up and be well adjusted, comfortable in their own skin, and able to flow through society lovely and naturally, just as they hope to. Because we have the technology, we have the medical intervention to help these children with their gender dysphoria, to treat their gender dysphoria. They have an affliction that they need treatment for, and we know how to treat it. And these people don't want that treatment to happen. And they're trying to demonize treatment. That's what they're doing. Demonizing treatment for children. That is not cool.
They are profitable for the rest of their life. It's disgusting to talk about.
They're profitable because they have to take medications the rest of their life. Like a diabetic is profitable. Is that good? No, it's just how you are. If you're a type 1 diabetic, you don't have a choice in that. That's how you live your life. You need medical intervention to help you with your affliction of your body not processing glucose correctly. Your body struggles to process glucose, you need medical intervention. Your body struggles with gender dysphoria, you may need medical intervention. You may not. You may not need medical to be trans. You don't actually need medical to understand who you are inside. You need medical interventions if the outside expression is not aligned with the inside identity. So, to turn this outside expression to more reflect the inside identity, sometimes that takes medical interventions. That's just the way it is. And we're pretty good at medical interventions today. In this decade, in this country, in many countries, we have good, sound, solid treatments for gender dysphoria. They work. These people just don't want them to be used. They don't want intervention of medicine that actually works to be used because they don't agree with someone's identity.
It's the worst possible face of capitalism, but it's going on.
While critics dismiss these claims, as mentioned earlier, an increasing number of detransition stories brutally expose the collateral damage. A British man named Richie Heron recently announced his intentions to sue the United Kingdom's National Health Service for allegedly not properly considering his mental health struggles before giving him transgender surgery. He reportedly woke up from his 2018 surgery with regret after his penis and testicles were removed. He now believes it was the biggest mistake of his life. Considering the medical...
You just woke up and go, oh shit. Fuck. Oh my goodness. I didn't want him to chop things off. Oh my goodness. They did it and they tricked me. No. But that might be frightening. You wake up and you have instant regret of a surgery. That's got to be awful. It is not taken lightly. You can't just go get a bottom surgery on a whim. You're going to plan that out for probably a year and a half to get that all scheduled out and taken care of. It is a journey. It's not a quick trip down to the market to get some gas and some cigarettes. And oh, by the way, I need a surgery. I'm gonna stop off here at the urgent care, and they're gonna hook me up real quick. No, it's not like that. They're making it seem like these people are just being tricked into surgeries, or I didn't know what was going on with me. I had a little mental issue, and I'm convinced that I am not the gender I was assigned. I don't know. Maybe people do that. I don't really see that happening too much. And if it does happen, it's an outlier. And why are we focusing so hard on these outliers? They're not talking about all the success cases. They're not. Nor will they. Because they're afraid of those. They're afraid of society shifting, the paradigm shift for acceptance that they don't accept. And that scares them. So let's listen to these scared people talk about surgeries.
Community's handling of these issues, one wonders how many more are like him. Unfortunately, though, troubles don't just exist inside the institutions. They're also reinforced and cheered on in the culture. Investigative journalist Jennifer Billick has explored these issues in detail.
I mean, look at all the celebration around these identities, these fictitious, synthetic identities. It's support.
Fictitious? My identity is fictitious. Is that what she thinks? Let's hear what else she has to say.
And celebrated in all media. If you're going to take drugs and you're going to carve your body up to express yourself, this is celebratory. People magazine put Jazz Jennings, a young boy who's been in the talk show circuit since he was...
Oh, F you. Jazz is not a boy. You're the one with the identity problems. You can't use someone's identity. You can't recognize they have an identity to them. That's a child. And you just want to insult a child? You just want to harm them like that? Just throw out an ad hominem attack on them? Jazz is not a boy. My goodness.
4 years old because his parents said he was a girl, and now he's in his 20s and he's had myriad surgeries. People magazine had him on the cover.
Y'all, if you haven't seen Jazz, go look up Jazz. That is one. If you want to see what hormone blockers can do to help someone develop the way they want to develop and express themselves the way they want to express, look at Jazz. She had a support structure around her from day one. When Jazz was like 4 or 5 years old, they started to discover and wanting to express their identity. And their parents understood that and supported them. Their parents were right behind Jazz the whole way. And Jazz is an amazing person, an awesome advocate, and just an incredible person for the trans community. How dare you bash her? How dare you bash her? She has exposed her life to the whole world just to show how great it can be to be trans in this world. She is a shining light for the trans community. And you want to say that she is not even who she is? You won't even give her credit for being her. That is cruel.
Celebrating his penis goodbye party.
According to Billick, the media complex simply parrots the medical mantras being perpetuated. It's a vicious cycle of justification that simply reiterates what's being said, irrespective of the medical or ethical soundness.
If you go to, like, say, Glamour magazine, Variety magazine, Salon magazine, blah, 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 you think you're reading a particular individual platform. But what you're reading is one platform that's part of a conglomerate, a massive conglomerate. And all of these conglomerates have a massive health platform. So they're integrally tied to the medical industrial complex.
Kind of sounds like consensus, right? Kind of sounds like consensus that these treatments work.
Now, so the medical industrial complex is driving these identities for profit, so they're going to drive them through these media platforms.
We have an entire medical system that's set up within a hyper-capitalistic society. We are uber capitalistic here in the United States. And to say, because you have to use services, yeah, if our medical was socialized like it should be, where everyone has access to it and it doesn't cost monies that can separate people's treatments based on their class status, if we had a socialist medical program, yes, it would be awesome. But we don't. We have a capitalist medical. All our medical is capitalist here in the United States, so of course it's profit. Everything in medicine is profit here in the United States. All of it is. So don't isolate one treatment and say, oh, it's capitalist and they're capitalizing on it. Our whole society is capitalist. Come on.
I made a list of their different platforms and how each of them are supporting this narrative of transgenderism being cool. So they're all sending out the same messages at the same time that are supporting medical platforms, these medical industries. It's pretty wild how it's all connected.
Lisa.
Pretty wild that everyone comes into agreement and going, hey, this works. Wow.
Ellen Davis, who is the author of the book Tomboy, The Surprising History and Future of Girls Who Dare to Be Different, is a political liberal who has been critical of the left's approach to gender issues. And she's experienced the same media suppression in her own reporting. In 2017, she wrote a viral op-ed in the New York Times titled, "My Daughter is Not Transgender, She's a Tomboy," which was the beginning of her journey into the abyss.
After that op-ed in 2017, I was contacted by people saying things that sounded like right-wing conspiracy theory. The main thing they were saying is pharmaceutical companies are conducting experiments on gay kids. And I was like, well, I mean, maybe, but I can't write about that. And one thing I really took to heart was, in my own kind of letting myself be indoctrinated, was you're going to hurt people if you say the wrong thing about this, or if you question or probe or dissent. For years, I was writing in ways that were very, very carefully, that I would just hint at, maybe it's more complicated than we're making it seem. I accepted the idea of gender identity, even though part of me was like, do I have a gender identity? Is there a thing called cisgender? I don't know. But, I would.
Do I have a gender identity? What are you talking about, lady? Do you get confused sometimes and people start calling you a man? Or saying that you're masculine? No, you sit firmly in feminine woman. I'm assuming, because we haven't even questioned it. Yes, you have a gender identity. You do.
Just like allowing it to go through, but questioning on the side. I think what finally broke me was reading the desistance literature, and that 70 to 85, sometimes more % of kids in these 11 studies that had been referred for gender dysphoria, whether they met the diagnostic criteria or not, that the vast majority of them desisted, and of those, the vast majority were gay.
Ooh. That is interesting. Do you see how those 11 studies, who were they brought to us by? Who performed them? How were they set up? And we got a hint to that a little bit earlier when they were talking about those studies, and they said it would have been different if they actually affirmed their identity. So I have a good feeling that these studies were done by hyper-Christian organizations, and it was done to kids who came out to, I'm assuming, Christian parents who would not affirm them. And so they study those studies on kids who come out to their parents and saying, I'm trans or I'm non-cis, and the parents going, that's not going to happen in my house. No, you're not. And what's the results of that? When the kids doesn't get affirmation and they try to push back a little bit against what? All the authority against them? Of course they're going to descend back in. They're in a home where they cannot express themselves. If you set up a study and you're going to study children who want to express themselves but can't express themselves, and the conclusion is they don't express themselves, it doesn't take a genius to realize that that setup of that study was probably not great. So let's see what else they have to say about these studies.
So that's when the right-wing conspiracy theory that was, first of all, told to me by full lefties, there was nothing right-wing about it. I had been taught to think that way about anything that interrupted this kind of left narrative. That's when I thought, oh, those people are actually, there is something going on that we have to look into. And then I just spent a year interviewing people and really diving deep into the science and realizing that it does not actually support the affirmative approach, not really at all. And it might support a few kids after very careful evaluation, possibly going on to medical treatments, but it didn't support much else of what was actually happening. It didn't support the left-wing kind of dogma. It didn't support what we were teaching children in schools.
Oh, she's talking about the studies. The studies as those 11 studies apparently. It did not support. Yeah, because if the study's set up to fail, then you get failed results. Guess what? It's a failure.
She hit roadblocks.
I tried so hard to write about these stories and to write about the people getting hurt. I pitched to every possible left-wing outlet, and I got almost nothing. I had one op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I had one op-ed in Newsweek, which tends to run fairly conservative op-eds. And I also didn't get paid for either of those. So that was a year of work and 2 unpaid assignments. And not only was I not able to place these articles, but many of the people who had hired me regularly as a freelancer stopped hiring me. I think it was even pitching the articles signaled to editors that I was not a safe person to be associated with. And the result of that, the result of the difference in the way the left and the right are reporting on this, and I'm not a huge fan of the way the right is reporting on it either, but at least they tend to have their science right. And the result of not allowing us to tell this story in its full complexity is that we are not dealing with the same set of facts, and we are not dealing with the science. We are not interpreting the science in the same way. So what I found is that all my fellow lefties who haven't gone down the rabbit hole themselves and learned about this themselves, that they're poorly informed about this subject.
It's not just a media problem, though.
I don't think she really said much there. Informed about this. She kept dancing around the outside issues of there. What she's talking about is a social movement, right? Transgender people are like, hey, we belong in society. We want equality and normality within society. And these people are against that. And that's what it comes down to. They do not want us to have equality or normality in society. And so she's saying that we shouldn't, right? And at every step, no, we shouldn't allow that. How else would this look? How would this look a different time in our history of our country with other social movements? Maybe back in civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s and 70s. How would she sound if she was like, oh, well, all of these people X over here are wanting to associate with other people Y, and people Y are feeling uncomfortable about these people being in their space, using the same identities, using their jobs, using their drinking fountains, using whatever that population Y had already established. Now population X wants to come in and use those same things. And she might have, if she was back in the 50s and 60s, that same mindset of don't want this new thing to come into society. Well, not new thing, but this social movement, she's trying to stop a social movement is what she's trying to do. And if she's trying to stop a social movement against people, and people are trying to fight for their rights to exist, for normality and equality within society. And she's fighting against that. How would that look if she was doing it against because people are outcasted, not because of their gender identity, but outcasted because of the color of their skin? How would she sound bashing those people? It's the same thing. She's bashing people because of who they are. Holding back citizens to gaining their pursuit to happiness in life in this country is wrong. Holding back American citizens to experience equality and normality within society is wrong. No matter what group you're doing it to, whether she's oppressing civil rights activists in the 50s or 60s, if you're against those social movements, you're not going to get a good mark on you in history, right? Think about it, 20, 30 years from now, when we break through and society accepts us as people, and we have standing in society, and we have equality, and we have normality, we will get there someday. And how are you going to look in the eyes of history? Generations that come later on to you are going to look back and be embarrassed by you. Not by my movement. Not by the activists on my side fighting for rights and equality and normality. We will not be looked back as the bad guys. In the future, we are the ones fighting the righteous cause. You're standing against this righteous cause. All of you on this podcast, all of you are. And you will all be looked at as demonized and awful people for standing up against our human rights to exist in our society.
Van Mall noted how the entertainment complex also steps in to promote these narratives, convincing people that transitioning is the best way to handle gender issues.
It's groupthink. I mean, this movement is very well organized, being driven by big money, philanthropic money.
Big money. I wish that money would come my way. Where's this damn big money lifting up trans people? There have been 500 bills written this year in the United States against transgender people at some form in process through our congressional lawmaking process, right? 500. That is lawmakers writing laws against trans people to harm, to hurt trans people. Not all of them are passing, not all of them are going through, but enough of them are to make a big dent in our movement, to really halt us, to really stop us, to really push us to second-class citizenship. That is what is happening right now today in this country. We are being forced into a subpart of society by laws written against us, by advocates trying to keep us from expressing who we are.
Obviously, the people who immediately profit, big pharmaceutical firms, biotech, that kind of thing. And, obviously, whatever administration is in office federally is going to make a difference. But basically, they just rode this in on the coattails of the gay rights movement and the Obergefell decision. And people get upset when you say that, these are two different things. That may be, but the mechanisms that were in place were easily co-opted to buying off on this idea that, transgenderism and transgender equality was the next great battlefield for civil rights and human rights. Now, when I saw that happening, and it was so obvious.
Wait, is that a bad thing? Does he think that we shouldn't have rights? Let's listen.
Yes, I just thought people would see right through it, and I was wrong. They didn't.
You thought people would see right through and say, no, trans people don't deserve equality and rights? Is that what you really think?
And now we have a situation where corporate America is all over it. And again, these big activist groups that are promoting this with the full help of corporate America. So now it's the entertainment industry, the media, corporate America, and the education system that are pretty much, I try to avoid terms like brainwashed, but that have been indoctrinated pretty solidly that there's one way to think on this.
No, it's not true. It is what a movement looks like. When a social movement starts to get traction and starts to actually go places, it is social. It is our communications. It is our entertainment. It is everything about our society has to be aware of this issue. In order for us to have equality and normality in society, society has to recognize us as one of them, as us, as part of the fold. And that's what it takes. If we are pushed to the outer margins and not allowed to be in these mediums, in the television mediums, in the radio mediums, in all of the entertainment mediums, then we are not being seen by society. And if we're only being seen by society as demonized through harsh news reports and advocates who do not want us to have equality, it is hard to overcome that. We do need the help of all of society to lift us up and give us equality in society, because we are part of society. That's how it works. There's no other way for us to do that. That's what a movement looks like.
Otherwise, you're a hater and a bigot and a phobe, and the other side doesn't have to come up with anything more clever than calling people haters and bigots and phobes.
Yeah. Think about the people who were against the social movement of not owning human beings. When those people are like, hey, we need to stop owning human beings. That is effing wrong. It has always been wrong. It will never be right. And if you fight against that, if you fight for the rights to own other human beings, all you have to say is, you're a racist bigot. You don't need more of an argument for that, do you? If someone's position is, I want to hold someone back from having equality and normality, all you have to do is point that out. You're a bigot. That's bigotry. That's why we have the word bigot, and that's why the word bigot should be harsh in society. Because it's not right to treat people that way. It is bigoted when you choose to oppress a group because of who they are. It is bigoted. Yes, that is a great tool. I can't wait till we get a place in society when someone tries to bash a trans person and just people turn them and going, bigot? And then that person has to shame away in society.
The failure of medical institutions and communication channels is evident, and the resulting fallout is tragic. From maimed individuals who changed their minds to the family structures and parental rights conundrums, we're just beginning to see the impact of the transgender craze. For Lisa Davis, the impact on families is especially troubling.
The scariest part about this gender revolution for me is the emphasis on family abolition. The idea that if your parents are unsupportive, you should reject them.
If your parents are unsupportive, you should reject them. That's kind of cut and dry, pretty simple, right? No. Oh, goodness. What happens is when parents do not affirm and do not support a child, and a child comes out in an environment that is harsh like that, what are they supposed to do? The rate of transgender children who do not make it through their childhood because of situations like this is way too high, way too scary. They need support, and when they don't get support, what are they supposed to do? It's a cruel position you put a kid in. Are they supposed to keep their parents happy and not be who they are? That's what you're advocating for. And You're taking a clip of some report, someone that we're going, X amount of children are not getting support in their home when they come out as trans. What can they do? Many times they're thrown onto the streets. LGBTQIA kids are thrown on the streets, out of their house, at greater numbers than any other group of kids. It's kind of twisted there. You're saying that those kids should turn their back on their parents, but what's really happening is the parents are turning their backs on the kids. And you're thinking that should be okay. The parent turns the back on the kid and doesn't support the kid's identity. Therefore, the parent's cool? Is that what you're thinking? Parents cool? No affirming? No identifying the kid who they are? Trying to make a meat puppet is what you're trying to do. You're trying to raise a meat puppet with the seasoning you put into it. You're not trying to raise a human kid. You're trying to raise a meat puppet. I want us to have kids. Let kids be kids. They're going to grow up and be adults. They're going to grow up and shape and change this society. The children are the future society. Let them express who they are.
Children should be removed from families that don't wish to medically or socially transition a child.
All children should be removed from houses that are being abusive to them. If the home is abusive to the child, take that child out of the home. That's why we give states rights for that. We give county rights to do that. We try to protect the children as a society. And if the parents are being abusive to the child shouldn't be in that abusive situation. Not that hard.
There is research, decent research, that says familial support is key to LGBT children. And that does not necessarily mean that support is affirmation, but it means that you keep the child in your life, the child keeps the...
How do you support them without affirming them? How? What are you supporting? I don't understand. I don't understand what that parent would be supporting if they're not supporting the affirmation of the child's identity. Who are they supporting? They're supporting a meat puppet child that they mold and season to be the child they hope to be. That's not how children work, though, is it? Children are children. They're individually unique humans. You have a little human in your house. Let that human express who that human is. And help that human to be a great citizen when they grow up. How can they be anything great or anything amazing if they can't even figure out who they are, if they can't express who they are? That's key. Identity and expression.
Parent in his or her life that you try to stay connected, you try to figure out how to connect across difference. And the woman who designed that research has worked with families where even parents were horribly abusive, and she still tried to keep the family intact. She tried to get them to come to a place of understanding.
What kind of understanding? They're a horribly abusive parent. What understand? Kid, understand your parents are abusing the shit out of you? What is that? Trying to get it to... You separate that abusive parent and you get that abusive parent into some kind of education system, some kind of reform so they're not abusive, and then you can reintroduce them with the kid. You don't allow a child to just be abused because you want to keep a family unit together. F that. If that child's horribly being abused, remove that child from that situation, that horrible abusive situation. They don't have to be in, they shouldn't be in an abusive situation.
Of one another. And somehow that has been interpreted by a kind of very extreme, I mean, I'm not even sure they're left, you know. I think they're more in outer space than left. But that's been interpreted as the family unit should be destroyed if the parents are not affirming.
If the family unit consists of abusive people, you need to remove the abusive people. Am I making a bad statement here? I don't think children should be abused. I just don't.
And you are mostly talking these days about teenagers with complicated mental health profiles.
As the nation fractures over this difficult issue, one fact remains clear. Trust in the medical community is in crisis. Given the painful stories that are being suppressed, Lisa is hopeful that the truth will ultimately prevail.
My hope is that we can move past framing this as a left-right issue and really try to...
I agree. It shouldn't be a left-right issue. It's a human issue. It's children. Shouldn't be politicized like that. I agree.
Evaluate it from a scientific, medical, psychological perspective.
Yep.
And really ask ourselves what's best for these children and stop politicizing it, because I think it's causing a kind of national sickness. But I am deeply, deeply disappointed at the left and mainstream media's unwillingness.
Oh my God, you were so close. You were like, hey, this shouldn't be political. We all need to address it. I'm like, yes. Let's end on a good, agreeable note. And then she's like, but then those other political people here, they're doing it wrong. Yeah. What are you doing? Who cares?
To do their job and investigate this away from their own political biases and simply try to tell a complicated truth, tell the stories of the people who've been hurt, not just the people who've been helped.
Okay.
Next time on Generation Indoctrination, we will engage the philosophical history of gender ideology in an attempt to answer the questions, how did we get here? And where do we go from here? Stay tuned.
All right. Wow, we made it through that episode. Woo. Okay, so that episode was with the medical stuff, and I think we're going to history and philosophy of trans with these people. Whew. That's going to be fun. So I'm going to wrap it up for today, and we will see what this podcast has in store for us next week. So tune in again. Thank y'all, and remember, love yourself, but more importantly, like yourself and treat people the way they want to be treated. Bye-bye for now.